I'm the board game captain.
I'm Lynn.
And today we're going to be reviewing and talking about the expansion to Crusader Kings called Councilors and Inventions. So first off, I want to thank Free League Publishing for both sending me a copy of Crusader Kings to play and do some content with, as well as the expansion. If you haven't checked out our review and tutorial we did to Crusader Kings, I recommend you check that out. I'm going to link it at the end of this video if you haven't checked it out already. But a quick recap, if you haven't checked it out, we did give it a positive rating, both of us. So now we have tried the expansion out. Let's show what comes with the expansion. What do you think? Start there. So the expansion is the following. It is a rule book and it is a bunch of minis. Now the minis are really nice. I've got nothing negative to say about the minis. I particularly like the mini for the Navy. The ship mini is really cool, as well as I like all the ones with like that are on pedestals. There's one for the bank where it's like a bunch of coins on a pedestal. It's a really cool looking mini, and also I really like the one for the library, which is a book on a pedestal. So yeah, these minis are really cool looking. They're really nice. Now, if you're familiar with Crusader Kings, you know there already are Councilors and Inventions in the game. Mm-hmm. The Councilors and Inventions are those cards that you can purchase 1 to 3 of on your turn from like a little market on the board, right? Mm-hmm. And so they give you special abilities that you can do. So you might be curious, like, what is this, right? I mean, it seems weird. It's like, it's the Councilors and Inventions expansion, but you're like, but I have Crusader Kings, and it has Councilors, and it has Inventions. I don't understand. And I was a little confused after playing the game too, and I went and read this, and basically what the idea is in this is they have 2 copies of each Councilor and Invention, and when you buy one of the cards, you get to take the miniature and you put it on the card, and it gives you the ability to, during the, what do they call that phase? The same phase where you do the marriages. It's the, so it's the dynasty phase, which is the same phase when you're allowed to appoint dukes and duchesses, as well as organize marriages. Yeah. So once per dynasty phase, you can either move one of these minis from its card to a spot on the board that, according to the rule book, it's legally allowed to go, or back. And the idea generally is that they gain a second ability.
Yeah, it gives you extra things to do.
Yeah, it's a more specific ability. So instead of having,
can you still do just the card ability, or is
not
it super
most?
impose it?
Most of them you can. If you recall from where you're playing, there are a couple you can, which might be where it gets a little confusing. The Archbishop says can be placed. So as he's kind of a no-brainer, because he gets an extra ability and can still do his normal ability, which is a little weird. He can be placed, he's a good example for that. So he says, Archbishop can be placed on any independent territory on the game board. When attempting to marry a character in the territory, the player who placed the Archbishop gains an additional trait draw. So it's a no-brainer, it's good. And then it says, even when placed on the game board, the Archbishop retains its ability to let the player crusade twice in the same hour. So there's no reason not to use the Archbishop. He's a total no-brainer. But then on the other hand of things, there are a lot where it loses its ability. And a good example of that is the longbow. Here's the mini for the longbow, by the way. There we go. So here's the longbow. Now, so if you're not familiar, the longbow gives you an extra trait draw when invading people. So it says instead of that, the longbow can be placed in any territory under the player's own control. When invading from a territory with the longbow miniature, the player gets 2 extra token draws instead of the one you would get from any territory. The territory needs to be mobilized as usual in order to invade from it. If the invade action succeeds, the player chooses to move the foot soldier from the invading territory, the longbow miniature follows with it. So basically you're trading in for the longbow, you'd be trading in a single trait draw on any territory you want to invade from for 2 extra trait draws from a single territory that maybe you're planning to do a couple invasions from, or a very important invasion from. And that's what a lot of these are, is you can trade in a general bonus from the normal cards for a more specific bonus. Though, like I said, there are some like the Archbishop where they're a total no-brainer because they get to keep their old abilities, which I thought was a little weird. Okay, so what are your thoughts on this expansion?
I think for the most part, it's unnecessary. I didn't really see the point in getting the extra, because I mean, some of the time, like when I used the Navy one, and like I never used it.
Yeah, it allowed you to attack from multiple territories to
Yeah.
one territory. Yeah, there were some where the extra ability seemed kind of like, oh, maybe it'll come up,
Yeah.
but meh. And then there's others like with the bishop where it's like if you get the Archbishop, you're using him every round. There's no reason not to. So you're like every round you're putting him somewhere, then you're taking him back. Then you're putting him somewhere, then you're you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because he's like he's constant.
Well, because I mean, all the cards that these symbolize come in the base game, and they have their own little special ability.
Yeah.
I think it was like a good idea to maybe like it's a good idea to what's the word? Maybe like focus the abilities a little for people who were sitting there and saying like, gee, I have the Navy, I really wish I could, attack two places.
No, it's from two places to one place. Yeah,
Whatever.
or something,
I
yeah.
didn't even actually use it, so
Yeah.
I don't know. But
It's very situational.
But I mean, overall, I think it's unnecessary if you're just playing the game, like just beginning to play the game. If you've played the game for like a year or two consistently and you want to add something new to it, then that's who I think it's aimed for.
Yeah, it does. So it gives more options.
Yeah.
It gives more options. The options can be a little confusing though because the regular options on the card, the extra option obviously isn't because it's in the expansion. So you got to refer to the pamphlet. You got to refer to the pamphlet to find the extra options. After you use them a couple times, you're going to remember them though. Especially like the Archbishop because he gets used constantly. As soon as someone gets the Archbishop, they're going to use him twice and they're going to be like, okay, I know exactly how to use the Archbishop. I don't need to refer to the same. I'm harping on it because he's actually my favorite part of this expansion. I think what they did with the Archbishop is awesome, but at the same time, making him a no-brainer, making him like you're definitely going to constantly use him seems a little weird when there's a lot of others where you're like, Like there were plenty of others we just like did not use.
No, like I read the one for the bank, and it's like you put the bank in a territory you control, and then you get like extra tax money from it. But then if someone invades you and takes that territory,
they take the bank.
They take the bank. So it's like, why, you're just pretty much putting a bullseye on that territory.
Yeah. So I'm a little iffy on this too. Like I like it. I think well, first off, the miniatures are fantastic. The rules are interesting, but they feel like they needed more time. They don't feel, in my opinion, the rules in this expansion do not feel up to the level of the rules in the base game. The rules in the base game are really well thought out. They feel like they had a lot of time to develop and to play test, and I really like Crusader Kings, which, again, check out our review of that. But, like, I played this, and I felt like I don't need to add this to the base game. The base game is already so good. While it wasn't bad, it didn't add enough to the base game that I'm like, I always want to play this expansion. I don't. Like, I want to play Crusader Kings next weekend if we have time, but I probably wouldn't put the expansion in. And that's not what you want from an expansion. And it feels a little bit of a letdown for me because of how much I like Crusader Kings, but yeah, I'm kind of lukewarm on this expansion, and you are too. I know you are. We were and you were just talking about it a little bit, that you felt your key word was, and I think it was a good key word, was unnecessary. You already said that. You said it felt unnecessary. It's already a game. Crusader Kings is already a game with amazing amounts of options, and this just adds in some more options, but it's options that, I don't know. Again, some of them you're like, they're so situational, you're barely going to use them, and others are not an option, like the Archbishop. He's a no-brainer. You're going to use him. You're just going to use him. He's just better. They just made the Archbishop better. He gets to keep everything he used to do, and he gets something new. at the same time. Which may have been a little silly, actually. Even though I liked him because I thought he was one of the best parts of this expansion in regard to utility. But then by comparison, he makes a lot of the other parts of this expansion seem less good. So it's like he stands out because he makes the new abilities of a lot of the other miniatures here just seem like, well, it's not as good as the Archbishop, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so I don't dislike it. Again, I think the production is great. The miniatures look great. It's just, if an expansion is not as good as the base game, I'm not probably going to play it as much with the base game as I would the base game without the expansion. And so I think we've basically harped on that enough that it's time to rate it. Do you want to rate it first or second?
I'll rate it first.
All right, go ahead. What do you got?
I'm going to give it a 5.
So 5 is meh. What went into your decision to give it a 5?
Mainly that I didn't feel that it added enough to the game. It felt like just an alternate method of play rather than an expansion. Like, oh, we've played Crusader Kings 5 times this month. Let's do it this alternate way just to switch it up a little.
Yeah.
It doesn't feel like a fully realized expansion.
So I'm going to give it, I'm not going to go quite as low as you. I'm not going to go to a 5. I'm going to go to a 6, which is still positive, but 6 is I need to be in the mood to play it because I think more often than not, I'm going to play Crusader Kings without this expansion. But maybe, like you said, if Crusader Kings starts to get stale, and I do really like it, and I want to add in some more options, I might try putting this expansion back in to add some more options in. It's not one of the worst expansions I've ever had. It's just not thrilling me. So I might add it back in down the road, or it might actually, though, and this is the part that hurts me, it might wind up on the cull pile at some point because something tells me actually I'm going to more often than not play Crusader Kings without this. That being said, still love Crusader Kings. Think the base game is great. You guys should check out our review and tutorial of Crusader Kings. But the Councilors and Inventions expansion, Lynn said it best. Say it again.
What did I say? Oh, it's unnecessary. Feels unnecessary. It feels like it's unnecessary.
What did you say? Oh, there you have it. Unfortunately, that is our review for the Councilors and Inventions expansion. I had high hopes for this because of how much I like Crusader Kings. But it came down to a 5 and a 6. A little bit middle of the road for us here for this expansion. But if you enjoyed seeing this expansion review and you'd like to see us do more reviews of board game expansions, be sure to give it a like, share it on all forms of social media, and if you haven't already, please subscribe to the Board Game Captain. That's Captain spelled with a K on YouTube. And until next time, game on.